Are you ready?
Hello, and welcome to the Whole House Podcast, where we promise to bring you home, health, and family all in one place. We're a blog team trying our hand at podcasting, and we like to compare our different purposes and giftings and strengths to the rooms in a house. Together, we make up the whole house. So grab a cup of coffee and join our overly caffeinated team here for the Whole House Podcast. Hello, and welcome to the Whole House. We're here today. This is Carly,
Kathleen,
Amerey,
Lori.
and today we are talking about something that we really care about. It's been in the news lately, and we're planning on releasing this podcast right around the same time as National Human Trafficking Awareness Day on January 11th. And it was started in 2010 by President Obama, and so I think that probably began maybe a bigger awareness of the issue of trafficking.
Yep, I'm sure.
But I'm going to read just a definition from the internet of human trafficking. And it is the action or practice of illegally transporting people from one country or area to another, typically for the purposes of forced labor or commercial sexual exploitation. And so I want each of us to kind of tell you when we first became aware of trafficking. And for myself, Carly, when I was in college, I was in a group called InterVarsity, and we started kind of delving into this topic in the fall of my freshman year.
Okay.
And so we partnered with, I believe, World Vision with something called the Human Wrong Campaign. And so we studied, like, God's design for people to be free. And so we did, like, demonstrations on campus about how many people in the world at that time were trapped in slavery. We walked around campus, like, tied together, like some people in bondage are.
Right.
So that is when my heart kind of got lit on fire for this issue. And a lot of it just stems from the fact that God does not desire any of his people to be enslaved.
Right.
So, you're next.
Okay, Kathleen here, and I think that I've probably been aware of it longer than anyone here because I'm older than anyone here, only reason. But I don't think that we referred to it as sex trafficking 30 years ago. It was just enslavement, and we knew that those sorts of things were going on. And because I've adopted internationally, I was probably a lot more aware of what was going on in other countries like Poland and the Ukraine and a lot of the countries on the continent of Africa long before I was aware of what was going on in the United States, because there's an epidemic in the United States involving kids in social media being scouted and fed lies and made promises, and I'm sure that Carly will get more into that. But so I've been aware of it for a good portion of my life, and my parents were civil rights activists in the 60s, activists, and so I was very, very aware of everyone having human rights and every human having value and being chosen as a child of God, and that no one should be enslaved and no one should be mistreated. So yes, this is very close to my heart. So,
How about you, Lori? Well, I have vaguely been aware of sex trafficking for a while. You hear about it on the news.
Every once in a while.
Yeah, every once in a while. But I don't think I knew it to the extent that I do now. I think until I became friends with you, Carly. And also with your new book, Kathleen, defining home, that really opened my eyes a lot more to like, wow, this is happening a lot more than I really realized.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think a reason why a lot of people don't realize, other than just the desire to like remain comfortable and not really know about things that make you uncomfortable, is because these people are hidden from plain sight. Right. Like, these people don't have a voice of their own. Typically, like, you can say however many people live in the United States in the census, but there are probably, I don't know the exact numbers, there are thousands and thousands of people who are not counted in that census, who are hidden and trapped somewhere.
Right.
Yeah.
Amerey, do you want to tell us when you first became aware of trafficking?
Yes. I was just saying a little bit ago that I feel like I've been aware of it probably my whole life. At least since I was like 8 or 9, and I think that's because of Kathleen, my mom. And I think that it began to really be heavy on my heart when I was in college, and I just started to read some memoirs and books of people who were trafficked and who have survived and been recovered. And so I think that's when it started to get really heavy on my heart, and just to burden me to see the lives that had been stolen from them and things like that. So I say around in college is when I became like really aware of it.
Yeah. Kathleen has a few myths about human trafficking that you may have heard and you may still believe. And we just want to kind of set the record straight.
Okay. Here's the first myth is human trafficking does not occur in the United States. It only happens in other countries. And that is not true at all. In fact,
I feel like that's probably the biggest myth.
Yeah,
it is.
Right.
Yeah, I believe that.
Well,
Yeah.
right. And we were talking about this before we started recording. There's a huge rise in teens who are bored and they're on social media, and maybe they want a little extra spending money, and they get a promise of this guy who's already been priming them, has scouted them on social media, and has fed them a bunch of lies, and then they go meet this guy, this person, and they disappear. And I've read
a couple years
lots
ago,
of stories about that.
A couple years ago, it just became really, evident, or there was something that came to the top during the Super Bowl. That showed just during around the Super Bowl how many women
are bussed into the city where the Super Bowl is hosted, and basically just they're there for men who travel to the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
Yes, it's like a souvenir.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's just so we're talking about like the biggest sports
event
of the year, and it is basically the also largest source of trafficking and pornography and just prostitution.
Yeah.
And so not a lot of people know about that.
The Super Bowl only occurs in the United States.
Yeah.
So I feel like that's the biggest myth.
Yeah.
Right. And one of the things that, you're talking about these ladies being bussed in is that we have this thought process as people who value themselves, like, well, why didn't they just cry out for help, or why didn't they just help? But that's one of the myths, is they don't cry out for help because, first of all, they don't value themselves, because these are the people that devalued themselves from the beginning.
They think that they're worthless.
But in reality, these people are in danger.
Yeah.
They've been threatened.
Yeah.
Yes, that's what I was going to say.
Maybe they do believe that this is better than their previous life, but by most cases it never is.
Yeah.
Right. They're often threatened that one of their loved ones will be killed.
Yeah.
Or sometimes they don't have anywhere, they think they don't have anywhere to go because maybe they don't have any loved ones. So if they left, where would they go?
Well, and in a lot of places also, there isn't somewhere safe to turn. Like, there are a lot of places where say the police are infiltrated with people who are partnering with traffickers. So that is the reality of the world we're living in.
Yeah.
But in college, and I'm not sure which organization I started following first, or I'm going to talk a lot about some organizations I know of later in the podcast, but someone told me, and I cling to it as hope, that we could be the generation to see the end of human trafficking.
We can be like the William Wilberforce of human trafficking.
And I mean, I've clung to that over the years, that like I long to see a world where this does not exist.
I do too.
So, do you have some more myths?
Yes.
Sorry.
I'll try to
just do them all, and I won't say anything else.
Human trafficking victims are only foreign-born individuals and those who are poor. That is a myth. Human trafficking is only sex trafficking. That's a myth. Individuals must be forced or coerced into commercial sexual acts to be victims of human trafficking.
Nope, coercion is not actually a word in the definition.
Right. Human trafficking and human smuggling are the same thing. That's a myth. Human trafficking victims will attempt to seek help when in public. And because we're so random, we've already started discussing some of these things. So those are the myths.
So I want to talk a little bit about something that just happened recently, why trafficking and slavery are kind of in the news right now. And on December 3rd of this year, 2017, CNN got a video of a slave auction in Libya, basically exposing something that goes on all over the world, but it just kind of proved what people had been saying for a long time about slave auctions in Libya. And so I want to read a Twitter thread that I really liked. Just a second. From a guy named Hassan Ahmad. And so, raw video of a live slave auction was recently obtained by CNN, documenting the existence of a Libyan slave trade. Human beings were being sold for as little as $400. Reports of 9 other slave auctions throughout the country of Libya. Libya is at a transition point for refugees. Many are escaping horrific conditions. Others are lured with the prospect of jobs that don't exist. Caught by traffickers, they're thrown into cages. Some are harvested. Livers and kidneys are popular. Slavery is not just a problem in Libya. It's worldwide. By some estimates, 45.8 million people in 167 countries lived in enslaved conditions in 2016. The Libya slave trade works for awareness, but this is worldwide. It's been worldwide. We never beat it. The New York Declaration for Refugees and Migrants sought to create a global compact to combat contemporary forms of slavery. Our presidential administration just backed out of it, saying it would be inconsistent with U.S. immigration policies, while the Libya slave trade rages. We can't police the world, is what they say about it. This is defeatist. The resources are there. What's lacking is the will. It starts with awareness. Slave trades create refugees. Some estimates are as high as 65 million people worldwide, and it's all connected.
Wow.
The Libya slave trade is not some isolated incident half a world away. Forcibly displaced people are vulnerable. They get preyed on. It happens in Central America with gangs, in the Middle East with terror groups, in Africa with dictators. Ignoring a problem invites it to your door. Slavery is still a thing. It never went away, and we did not solve the problem. The Libya slave trade shows that when conditions are right, these ghastly markets will crop up. Slavery is not a relic of the 19th century. So be aware about it, because it shows that 1, slavery is still around. 2, we must not help create situations where these cancers can grow. 3, foreign policy that ignores this is no policy at all. 4, we must keep fighting or it will get worse. And this is my favorite. These are some things that can be done. Number 1, prioritization at the UN, so laws between different countries. 2, supporting a group in Libya who works to end this. 3, fight root causes of slavery. 4, hold social media accountable. 5, donate to free the slaves. I'll talk about them later. 6, raise awareness. And 7, shop free. And then he asks if you're overwhelmed. And he gives a Gandhi quote. Success lies in the effort, not the attainment. So something he said, really, fighting root causes of slavery is on his list of things that can be done.
Right.
So Kathleen's new book talks, it's a story of a girl who's sold the lie of a better life.
Right.
And she ends up being trafficked for sex. And so let's talk about some of the things that lead to this. And some of them, he talked about refugees. Refugees are people displaced from their homes.
Yes.
They're vulnerable.
They have no safe place.
Yeah, They have no safe place. They're targeted because of their desperation, and they're often tricked by the lure of jobs that don't exist.
Right. They have their distinct jobs in human trafficking, and one of them is a scout. And what the scout does, either online or in person, is befriend a young person, find out what they're interested in, find out what they want out of life. For example, like, I'm going to let Lori tell a little bit more about the main character, Adelina, in Defining Home, because she's read the book so many times.
I have.
So go ahead.
So what was the scout looking for
What did
from
he target
her?
with her? Yeah, what did he bring out? Or she.
Yeah, she. I think she was looking for, like the older teens that were getting ready to leave the system, who were probably.
We're talking about the foster care system, and this book takes place in Poland.
Yes.
But foster care youth all over the world are targeted. And typically it's foster care youth, so without parents, they're impoverished. These are the root causes that are causing trafficking.
Right, and kids who are ready to age out of the system.
Yes,
is like
they're very
the teens
vulnerable.
in the orphanage. They're ready to age out of the system, and so they don't have a plan.
You're fine. No, you were right. Because, that is that's in Poland, and it's a little bit different than what we have here in the U.S. So,
Right.
But yeah, they were, she was targeting the ones that were about to age out, and she pretty much infiltrates and sabotages the adoptions, and then she says, "Hey, I know a guy." And then they're gone.
Right.
We don't want to give too much away.
Yeah,
about the
that's
book.
what I'm like. How much do I say? Because I don't want to tell you the whole book because it's amazing.
Sorry.
Well, and I wanted to add something because we were talking about Libya, and there was a very huge recent raid in the United States. Operation Cross Country 11, which ran from October 12th to October 15th, 2017, and focused on underage victims of prostitution, involved 55 FBI field offices and partners in Canada, the United Kingdom, Thailand, Cambodia, and the Philippines, according to a news release. Half of the arrests occurred in the state of Georgia, here in the United States. The average age of the victims was 15, and the youngest was only 3 months old.
Oh.
The baby was rescued in Denver, where she and a 5-year-old girl were being offered to an undercover officer in exchange for $600. So, child sex trafficking happens in every community across America. So, we're working. We want to combat that not only in other countries, but in our own country as well.
Yeah. So, we may have just given you kind of a ghastly, jolt.
On our second podcast.
Jolt. But we also really want to use this podcast to inspire you to do something.
Yeah. Exactly.
And so, my last 8 or 9 years since I learned about this, I've spent, just sharing as much as I can on social media. Legitimate things from organizations I trust to provide good information. And so,
and we'll link a lot of those.
Yeah, I'm going to go through a list that I have. This is not an exclusive list. There are dozens and dozens of organizations doing good. But I encourage you to find someone to even just learn about. I think awareness is the first step. Something I'm really excited about is that, I've been looking for ways to get more involved, and so using my voice on this podcast, to speak out for this, that's my next step.
Right.
So I'm gonna just dive into this list I have. The first organization I have is the Exodus Road, and you can actually learn more about them on my husband's podcast, Decent Christian Talk, episode 51, where they talk with Remedy Drive. It's a band. Their lead singer, David Zach, and he works with Exodus Road. He goes on the road to rescue people from slavery. And then in that podcast, they also talk with International Justice Mission and Relevant Podcasts, Eddie, and he gives a lot of practical tips. So another couple organizations, like I said, the first thing I became aware of was from World Vision, and they also partner a lot with International Justice Mission. So they do a lot of just work on the ground in different areas that they're already working in. Another one is A21. They have 12 offices across the globe to seek out and rescue people trapped in trafficking by aiding and protecting those who are most vulnerable. And so we've talked about the people who are most vulnerable. We're talking about people in poverty, people displaced from their homes, children,
foster kids aging out of the system.
Yeah. Another couple, Not for Sale, and they also have an org called Free to Work. They do a lot of ratings on companies' ethical practices, which gives you the ability to be more choosy about where you buy things from.
Oh, that's good.
So you can decide whether this company has an A or an F rated on their ethical practices. Whether their employees are taken care of, they are safe, they're paid. A lot of things like our clothing, our chocolate, our coffee. Those are things that we can consciously make decisions to buy better.
Exactly. It's tough, but we can do
tough.
it. I mean, it's a minor inconvenience when you think about it.
And it's a little bit more expensive to buy things that are fair trade certified, but in my book, it's worth it.
Right.
Another company that does that, or another organization that does that, is Made in a Free World, and they just take the time to expose companies with bad treatment of workers and slave-produced goods and encourage you to buy better. Another organization that I wouldn't say volunteered with, it's called Dressember, and it's kind of an event where you basically volunteer to wear a dress every day of the month of December. I'm not doing it this year.
I have a lot of friends who do that. We should do it next year.
We should. I've done it twice before. And so
and you can wear leggings under your dress, but you just wear a dress every day, and then you take a photograph of yourself wearing the dress, and you talk about that on social media.
And you can raise money for their foundation. and they partner with a lot of other organizations just to raise awareness through the month of December. One that I really, it's one of the first organizations I learned about, is Love 146, and they have a cool story. They were in a red light district. I don't know what country, I don't know the exact story. They were, and a lot of times you can't just like grab a girl and run away with her. You can't like say, we're here to take this girl, we're here to rescue her, because it's dangerous.
Yes.
So they were doing an undercover mission. They were at basically an auction of girls, and one girl caught this guy's eye. He could tell that she still had fight left in her eyes, and her number was 146. And so he started this basically in her memory, because he wanted to help girls who still had the fight to get out of there. There's another few. End Traffic is an organization under UNICEF, and they do a lot of encouraging laws that are consistent with ending trafficking. So they do a lot of like awareness of talking to your Congress members about the things that need to be taken care of. Just passing laws that
you
can
have
aid,
to change. You
that
have
can
to
aid
change
instead of
policy.
keeping. This one's cool. This organization is called Thorn. It was founded by Ashton Kutcher, and they are basically.
I think he's another reason why I heard more about sex trafficking.
Yeah.
Is because he's
So
so involved in it.
I love like celebrities that are getting involved in this, because that. I think that
because they have a platform already,
yes,
and
they have a big voice that's able to reach more people. So they're basically software engineers that are seeking out, exposing, and shutting down child sexual exploitation online. And they do something called the hackathon, where they like, it's like a contest. It's really cool. An organization that I have worked with, I actually like ran a marathon with them and raised money for them. It's called Nuru International, and they right now they've been in Ethiopia and Kenya, and so their model of ending poverty, they're treating a root issue of trafficking. And so their model of ending poverty is going in and doing holistic and self-sufficient poverty relief. And so they're training leaders in communities, better
so
farming
much more effective.
tactics, better ways to keep a harvest through the year, or save money, or they're giving microloans to women who want to start small businesses.
I love that. Yeah.
So like that is an organization that was founded by a West Virginian. They're doing awesome things, and I love their model of that. Their plan is they go into a place for 8 years. After 8 years, they leave, but their model does not end.
Right. And that's the way you have to do it.
Yeah,
you have to set up the framework so that they don't keep having the same issue.
Yeah. Something else local, we have an organization called Libera, and they, their goal is to help women find freedom from whatever binds them. And so be it an abusive relationship, be it just trauma from an abusive relationship, or trauma from just a broken past, even milder things than that. They do like small group studies on freedom. And so I've partnered with them a couple times. We actually handed out soap at local hotels with the trafficking hotline on it. And we're going to I'm going to give you the National Human Trafficking Hotline in just a minute. But locally, I've gotten to do that. And so we are basically getting the trafficking hotline into hotel rooms where girls might be stuck.
Right. They might be.
And so I've talked to front desk workers at local hotels who, like, one in particular told me about an instance where these people checked in. It was an older man and a younger girl, and she just got the feeling something was wrong.
Yeah.
And not an hour later, they had calls complaining about noise, that a girl was being beat.
Oh my
And
goodness.
so she called the cops, and by the time the cops got there, they'd gone out the back door.
Wow. Oh my
so
goodness.
the group that has that runs the National Human Trafficking Hotline, which is 1-888-373-7888, they encourage you that if you see something, say something. Mm-hmm. And they encourage you to look for signs of trafficking.
Well, and that's how some of these huge raids start, is because people in the state of Georgia are reporting over and over again at the casinos, at hotels. They're seeing these young girls.
Yeah.
And they spoke up and said, what they needed to say.
But that's what I encouraged. Like, when we went to the hotels, we encouraged them. Libera can do training with their staff on the warning signs to see. And we encourage them to, talk to their housekeepers, because they are in the rooms. They're seeing people more closely than the front desk staff.
Yeah. Right.
But really, it's just, if you see something that makes you uneasy, it just looks wrong to you. It probably is.
It feels wrong.
Yeah.
You can tell. Well, and I think what's really interesting about our team is we all, this is all a burden for us, and maybe some of us a newer burden, but like I said, because I'm older, it's been a burden for longer, but I have a different thing that I feel that I need to do. Carly has this, raise awareness, and I have this, I have a heart for orphans, because 4 of my children were adopted, and I know what's going on in those countries, like in the Ukraine, where some of these kids are aging out of the system, and as soon as they're sent out the doors of the orphanage, there's sex trafficking guys waiting, and they just pick them up and take them, and nobody cares, because nobody wants to, nobody's there, and nobody has the funds to take care of these girls anymore. And so one of the ways that I'm addressing it is I wrote this book, Defining Home, to raise awareness, not just for adults, but for teens.
Yeah.
And my heart is that, we're talking about the people who are preyed on. The people who are preyed on the most are the ones who, like Carly said, are more poverty-stricken or refugees. But there's a whole new slew of kids that are being preyed on, and those are the kids who lack attachment skills because of their home life. There might be just divorce.
Or they're just looking for anyone to give them attention.
Right, they're just, exactly, and they're looking on the internet, and that doesn't mean that they're poor. Sometimes these kids are really middle class, and they're just looking for someone to give them attention, or they don't know how they're going to proceed in their life.
Yeah.
What's next, because they have no plan, and some nice guy tells them, or some teen, I've studied so many cases when I was writing this book, Defining Home, and they found, one 14-year-old who was a scout for a major ring, and all he did was he got on social media, and he just looked at people's websites and started talking to girls. And one particular little girl, she was only about 14 or 15, her dad noticed that her appearance had changed. She started wearing makeup, and that her attitude changed. And so he started looking on her computer and seeing all this, and he found this one kid that was constantly commenting, and found out that he had all of this kid's friends, he was the scout, were all adults. And so they ended up saving this girl before she was ready to go meet this person. So you've got that going on in the United States all the time, and then you have it going on in these other countries where kids are spending their life in the orphanage or on the street because they don't have a family. And those are the victims already before they even get scouted. Yeah. They've already been victims because they have no self-worth, no value. They don't value themselves. And that's, like I said, the way that I'm combating it right now is I'm a writer. So I wrote a novel. And I'm hoping that just you listening, to me, it's not about selling books. It's about awareness and reading what you need to read so that you can help the teens around you and in your area. And it starts at home first.
Yeah. So I want to talk to you really quick about, Carly, are you done? I want to make sure you're done with your list.
Yes, I'm done with my list.
Okay. I want to talk to you a little bit about two things. I want to talk to you about the different types of slavery that there are, and then also about not being, I can't think of the word right now, but not kind of being numb or
Apathetic?
No.
Complacent?
I like the way that guy with the Twitter thread, he said defeatist. It's like assuming we can't do anything about it.
Yeah, but so for me, okay, so I'll just start talking about it and maybe you guys can help me figure out the word. Okay, so my husband and I are kind of like, we like watching different TV shows, and we don't just, what I mean by that is that we seek out like really good TV shows, and we're kind of elitist in our TV shows and what we watch, and we only watch good stuff and da-da-da. I mean, everybody has different opinions, but recently we've watched a couple different shows and even a couple different movies, and some of them were even older movies where high-end prostitution or prostitution was relevant, or basically prostitution. And so what I mean by so you watch these shows, and lots of you guys might have watched them, like House of Cards and you know those movies where like the stripper has a heart of gold, and I'm serious.
Right. They normalize
Makes it seem like not a big deal.
Yeah, normalize it. Okay,
you get so used to, I'm just going to college and I'm prostituting my way through college, and that's a theme on many shows. Like, and so we begin to think, well, I don't begin to think, but you know.
So so what I'm saying is, like, when you watch those shows and you see those things and you see, like, I mean, the media is just the media, and they could present it to you in a way where these women are choosing to do this with their life, but in reality, that's a myth. That is not the norm. These, like, if you ever encounter, like, I don't know how many of you people will encounter women who are in prostitution, but
or a person rescued, like a survivor of forced prostitution.
Yeah, 90 probably like 95% of the time, women who are prostitutes are being forced to be prostitutes. But I also wanted to talk to you about, so basically don't just watch those shows and become numb to that. Don't just watch those kind of things and become numb to it and just think that's the way of the world, because it's not. These women are not choosing this. But so we've been talking a lot. One of the myths that Kathleen shared a little bit ago was that that human trafficking is not just that human trafficking is just sex. That was the myth. So it's not just sex, and we've talked a lot about that. And one of the articles I read just a few months ago was about a young lady who was she wasn't used for sex, but she lived in a very high-end home in California, but nobody knew that she lived there. And she was not fed properly, she was not taken care of, her needs were not met. She was there to take care of the home, do housekeeping and all of these. So she didn't even have to do horrible things. She took care of their house, but she was not fed. She was not allowed to go outside. Nobody knew she existed.
Was this the lady that was locked in the basement at night?
I don't know.
Because there's there's so many stories about that.
I read a book called Hidden Girl by don't want to butcher her name, like Shaima Hall, and I follow her on Twitter, and she is like a rescued former victim of that. Like she was. And I think a lot of times, like, young girls like that, and I want to be clear, it's not just women that are exploited. That's what I was just going to say. Exploited because, like, labor trafficking is very common. And, I mean, we live in a country where it's looked down upon to be a different I don't know, to be a different race.
Yes.
And so, like, I think it's hard to think that maybe those people didn't choose to come here.
Right.
Maybe they are being forced. Maybe it's dangerous for them to try to go back home.
That's what I was going to say. And it's very common for legal immigrants to bring with them a person they have purchased before they came to the United States, and they used them for slave labor.
Yeah, so you can kind of pick up on the ways that these people are hidden from plain sight. They are just some places it may be commonplace to have, a housekeeper, but
exactly.
maybe,
like when our dad was in Oman, and he was teaching there, his house came with a slave boy. And he just was, I don't need this slave boy. I don't, but no, your house comes with that. So yeah. Do you want me to get him?
Sorry, my children are crying.
It's been, Well, but let's let Amerey finish in case she has to go back out there.
So I wanted to say, just bring to light that it's not just like Kathleen said earlier. Oh, it's snowing. Sorry, guys.
Yay, it's snowing.
Okay, sorry. It's not just sex trafficking. Like Carly said, it's labor trafficking. It can be They can even live in a home that is not a bad home. It's not a bad, but they are not taken care of. They are not allowed to go out into public. They are not allowed to do those they are not living a normal life. They are not paid. They are just there, and they are being used.
Mm-hmm. And a lot of times they're fearful in some way. They're fearful of the people holding them hostage.
Yes. And then I wanted to talk really quickly about sorry, I'm listening for my child. So Nevada is the only place in the United States where prostitution is legal, and that's for very evident reasons, such as because of Las Vegas and things like that. And prostitution may be legal there, but human trafficking is still not legal there. Yeah. Okay, and so this is what made me think of talking about not being numb to shows and stuff. Is that a while ago, Seth and I watched. I don't remember what the documentary. He's famous for documentaries. I don't remember, but what he did was he went around to all the different states in the United States and talked about what made them special, like what you go to the state with. And so one of the biggest thing that he talked about in Nevada was prostitution. And he went to and it wasn't, when he was talking about it, it wasn't a bad thing. He was kind of a happy thing, and this is what makes Nevada special. And he went to a brothel, and I sat there and I watched it, and he talked to a couple different women, and I was thinking, how many of these women, probably all of the ones that he talked to, this was not a life that they chose for themselves, and now they're there, and sure, it may look like they get paid and things like that, but they're not. And that's the thing, is that
culture has made them believe that's normal.
Culture has made them believe that normal. And that's what Carly was talking about earlier when she was talking about the last organization. I'm sorry, Carly, I can't remember the name. About teaching the signs of knowing what human trafficking looks like. So I was just going to talk. That's all I had to say, was being aware of the different types of trafficking, and not thinking of it as a commonplace okay thing just because it's in media as a commonplace okay thing.
And like I said earlier, we don't want to leave you feeling downtrodden. Yeah. We really do. Hope. There is hope. We really do want to be part of the generation that ends this atrocity. Yes. And so we do just encourage you to seek out someone that you can even just have a conversation about this with. Maybe you can give someone their first glimpse of what this is all about. And I think a lot of it is just not being okay with what's going on. Just living counterculturally, because we do want to be different. And so speaking out against these things is different.
Yeah.
And
I think, just to sum up, what everybody has a different part of raising awareness and doing your part, and my part is writing, so I will keep writing. And I wrote this book, Defining Home, to raise awareness, so make sure it'll be in the show notes. Make sure you grab a copy of that and read it with your teen. And each one of us, like I said, we just have a different way of participating and ending slavery in general.
Yes.
And sex trafficking. So
yeah. Thanks for joining us today, and we want to be encouraging. We want to encourage you to seek out a way you can make a difference.
right, and that, this is only our second podcast, and we have a lot more coming that we've already recorded that are not such difficult topics and so heavy. So,
but this is really important to us.
Yes,
so
very important.
We encourage you to do something to make a difference this week. And thanks for joining us here at the Whole House. Bye.